Hello, Faith United Youth and everyone else. I welcome you to our youth video. I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving. I know for our family it was a little different this year. It was just us and the 4 kids, and we really tried to make it special, and I think it will probably end up being one of the more memorable holidays and Thanksgivings that they've had because of the strange circumstances. And I hope that for you and your family, you have some maybe new traditions or things that you're doing despite all that's going on that made it maybe even a little more special for you this year. Today is actually our first day of Advent. And so while we as the youth are still going through James, we're actually going to kind of tie it in together with our Advent series. And so we're going to create a bit of a bridge, and I'll kind of speak to that. You'll see how that works out here in a little bit. But so because we're still in the book of James, this week we would be in James chapter 4. And so that's where I'm going to start. And we're going to look at James chapter 4, verses 1 through 10. And then we're going to move on to another verse after that, after we talk a minute. So in James chapter 4, this is what it says. And if you were able to watch any of my other videos, you can be familiar with James in that he hits the nail on the head. He does not beat around the bush. He kind of just gets right to it. He says what it is. He calls people out, and you will definitely hear that in these verses. So let's hear what James says when he's speaking to, remember, the 12 tribes that are kind of scattered all over the place. So he says, "What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. And when you do ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. Or do you think Scripture says without reason that he jealously longs for the Spirit he has caused to dwell in us? But he gives us more grace. This is why the Scripture says, God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Come near to God and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and wail. Change your laughter to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord and he will lift you up." Okay, so if you are reading this and you are internalizing this, you may feel like you just got a beating, and I think that's kind of how I have felt when I have read this, and it has its intended effect, which is in verse 10, where James is admonishing us to humble ourselves before the Lord. And so if you can read this and not feel a little bit humbled and not feel a little bit like, ooh, yikes, then you might be perfect and we can learn from you. But I doubt that that's the case. So, James is basically saying, like, what causes all of these fights and quarrels among you? And so, I've alluded to this over the last little bit here in this series and in others that, there's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of craziness that's happening in our world. And so James himself is kind of trying to identify the root of all of the quarrels and the fights that happen in our world. And basically what he's saying is everything can go back to that selfishness inside of human beings. Basically it's in our own selfish nature. It's in our own human nature. It's in kind of like our DNA that, like, we want things and we can't have it. And so then what happens is we become kind of like children where we throw these fits. And I think that, if you're on social media for like a day, you can see people who are grown people throwing fits here and there, and acting very childish and selfish. And this is something that we all have done. So, like, if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I'm never like that, that's not true. We've all done that. We've all thrown those fits. We've all kind of, gotten riled up for various reasons. And in the end, what James is basically saying is, he's saying, submit yourself to God. Just calm down. Stop fighting. Stop all of this quarreling amongst yourselves. Stop demanding that you have your way, and submit yourself to God's way. and he's saying, you know, resist the devil, just kind of push back against all of this sinfulness and this selfishness, resist it, and you know, basically he's saying, wash your hands, you sinners, purify your hearts, grieve, mourn, and wail, change your laughter to mourning, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. I mentioned before that we're going into the season of Advent, and what that means is that we are entering into the time when we celebrate and we think of when the Israelites were waiting for their Messiah. They were waiting for what we now know as Jesus to come. And we enter into the time when we celebrate that coming of Jesus for the first time on this earth. And truly, the remedy that James is alluding to for this is in Jesus. And that, you know, the only way that we can be saved from our own selfish nature, from our own selfishness, our own sin, is to come near to God. And the good news, which is just such great news, you know, the gospel message in itself is that God has come near to us in the form of Jesus. Jesus, you know, God came to earth here so that we could be near with him. If we're gonna look at Psalm 80. This is one of the scriptures that goes along with our series for this week in our Advent series. And this is what it says in Psalm 80, verse 1. It says, "Hear us, shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph like a flock, you who sit enthroned between the cherubim, shine forth before Ephraim, Benjamin, and Manasseh. Awaken your might, come and save us." So, you know, here in this psalm, this says that Asaph is actually the one who wrote this song. And he's basically saying, like, God, you who are up in heaven, you know, sitting between the cherubim, you know, you're enthroned and you shine forth. And he's calling out these various tribes of Israel, Ephraim, Benjamin, Manasseh. And he's saying, come, you know, awaken your might, come and save us. And I know that, you know, when we celebrate Advent, we are like the Israelites saying, come God, come and save us. And we can be so thankful that we have a God who is faithful to us and who does draw near, so that we can also humble ourselves and draw near to him. He bridges that gap in the person of Jesus. And so I look forward to our next weeks as we enter into a time of Advent together, and as we join into the celebration that Jesus is coming, and he has come. And so I hope you guys have a great week with that this week. Next week will be our final week on James, and also in our Advent series. And so until then, God bless, and thanks for hanging out with me. Bye.